Hi everyone, welcome back to Aim at Melanoma series, Melanoma 101. I'm Alyssa Wilson, physician assistant, and also Aim at Melanoma's Ask an Expert. Today our topic is going to be sunscreen tips and application. Hopefully you've already went and watched the sunscreen video on different types of sunscreen, but if you haven't, go check that one out. It gives you a good background as to the differences between chemical and physical sunscreens. One thing to remember is that the best sunscreen is the one that you wear. So there isn't one that's necessarily better over the other. There have been countless clinical trials and other studies that have tested a bunch of different sunscreens, and really the most effective sunscreen is the one that you put on your skin, and remember to reapply. So go ahead and check that video out, but today we're going to talk about how you actually apply this sunscreen once you've decided which one is right for you. I will tell you that I use various types of sunscreens depending on the activities that we're doing, and also which kid I'm putting sunscreen on, because some of them have different preferences or dislikes. And so I'm going to show you a couple of different applications and some tricks. So one thing before we get started is I want to kind of go through the tips. So obviously, we want to make sure that we apply our sunscreens ahead of time. This is extremely important, as you'll see in my prior video or the video that you're about to watch, that chemical sunscreens need a little bit of time to fully absorb in the skin to be completely 100% effective. So make sure that you're applying your sunscreen, as a general rule of thumb, between 20 and 30 minutes before you go out in the sun. I usually start applying sunscreen to my kids about 30 minutes before. By the time I sunscreen our whole family, we're all pretty much ready to go. I, of course, am always the last one to get sunscreen, but at the end of the day, make sure you're giving those sunscreens time to work. Physical sunscreens are more immediately effective, but they do need some time to dry so that they're not rubbed off. So again, the greatest rule of thumb is just apply the sunscreen ahead of time. The second tip that I wanted to give is to use enough. So the recommended amount for an adult, a normal sized adult, is to use a shot glass of sunscreen. And apparently I still am no fun and don't have a shot glass lying around my house, but it's about the equivalent to this size, which is about the size, here I'll hold it in front of me so you can see it. It's about the size of a K-cup. So a shot glass full of sunscreen, which kind of can seem like a lot when you're applying it. I always tell people it's about as much as you can fit glooped up in the middle of your palm. So really making sure that you're applying enough is super important, because if it doesn't cover all of the surfaces, it won't be as effective. It doesn't mean it won't be effective at all, but it won't be as effective. The third tip that I wanted to give is to make sure that we reapply. This is actually the one that most people fail to do, which results in pretty significant sunburns. So not only do you have to apply it before you go out in the sun, but you always have to remember to reapply. So the general rule of thumb is about every 2 hours you should be reapplying your sunscreen, or after you're in the like submerged in the water for any period of time and towel off. So that may seem like it's a full-time job, but for 100% effectiveness of sunscreens, they do have to be reapplied. Some sunscreens will actually say, especially the chemical sunscreens that can be water resistant, they'll actually say on the bottle somewhere a time of reapplication, like must be applied after 80 minutes of water exposure or something like that. So some of those can be really helpful, especially if you're spending the day at the beach or the water park, to kind of know a general time frame. I actually usually set an alarm on my phone, which alerts my watch to let me know that it's time to reapply. Another tip is don't forget your, and I put ... because there's lots of don't forget yours. So you want to make sure that you don't forget the underside of your chin, the tops and the backs of your ears. For people like me who have a part, you want to make sure that you get some kind of sunscreen in your part, or wear a hat. Hats are really the most effective way to prevent sun exposure on your scalp. You want to make sure that you don't forget the tops of your feet and the tops of your hands. I've seen people get really horrible sunburns that way, forgetting these sort of not hidden, but body parts that you wouldn't exactly remember, your armpits and like this part underneath your arm. Especially if you're doing something active, your arms are not going to be straight down at your side. So you got to remember to sunscreen the hidden places. Don't forget. Then I wanted to make sure that we talk about other that aren't necessarily sunscreen related, like physical blockers, like sunglasses. You have pigment in your eyes, so just like you protect the rest of your skin, you need to protect your eyes as well. Not only will it help prevent things like glaucoma and cataracts, but also will prevent skin cancers and melanomas that can happen in your eye. We want to make sure we wear a floppy hat. Baseball hats are great to protect your scalp, but floppy hats really help protect not only your scalp, but part of your face, your ears, the back of your neck. So there's lots of really nice floppy hats. I'm actually part of the big head club, so I don't have a floppy hat to show you because I don't have one because my head is too big to fit in standard size hats. But floppy hats are really great because they give really good coverage around not only your scalp, but the rest of your body. And then I wanted to really quick touch on UV clothing because a lot of people will use UV clothing as part of their sun protection, and that's great. That's a great thing to do. You have to look at labels of the UV clothing because they will have expiration dates, believe it or not. So the way that these are designed is that after so many washes, a lot of times they will lose their effectiveness. The other thing to keep in mind is to really look at the label and to try to avoid washing these in fabric softener. That was a fact that I actually didn't know when I first started, but did learn over time. And it's just because it relaxes the fabric, aka fabric softener. And so it actually creates, loosening of those fibers. And so it can allow then some sun UV exposure to get in. So definitely use UV clothing if you have it. And, rash guards, like we'll use that for our smaller children. Rash guards are great because a lot of them are UV protected, and so you don't have to really use as much sunscreen on those places, which is really nice, especially for reapplication of little ones. But just remember about the fabric softener. So there's different formulations of sunscreens. I'm going to try really hard not to show you any labels because I don't want anyone to be biased by the choices that I have made. But spray sunscreens, these get a really bad rap, but I'm going to show you a way to use spray sunscreen that makes them a lot more effective. And actually, this weekend, my husband and I were both at our children's softball and baseball games, and we were out in the sun for about 8 hours. I didn't get sunburned, and all I used was spray sunscreen because that's all I had. Normally I carry sunscreen with me. We happened to get caught on a day that, really wasn't expecting it to be sunny. In Pennsylvania, it was pretty cold. And so, this is what I had and I made use of it. So when you're applying a spray sunscreen, one of the things to keep in mind, I'll just spray my arm, hopefully I won't miss, is you spray, so you get a really good spray coverage. See, so like wet, you can see. But then also what I do after is I rub it in. So you want to make sure that you cover, and I didn't spray my hand just because I don't, for this purpose, want to get it on there. But you want to spread it all out all over, and I would spray the underside of my arm as well if I was really applying this to go out in the sun. So one thing to keep in mind, spray it very generously, but also rub it in so that you can make sure that you get it everywhere. That's a really great way to make sure that you're not leaving spots on your arm that are not covered, okay? Same thing kind of applies. I always shake your sunscreen, especially the physical blockers, because you can get a little bit of settling with the titanium and zinc. So when I am applying this to my arm, and you'll see this is actually a physical blocking sunscreen, so you're going to see that it's a little bit white. So I usually try to use the dot system where I like put a dot of sunscreen and then might have put a little too much, but where I put the dots and then I try to blend them together. So you really have to kind of work to get these physical blocking sunscreens in, but with enough work, they will be absorbed. So I did use a little tiny bit too much, but too much is never bad with sunscreen. So you can see that once you rub it in, that it becomes pretty much translucent for the most part. There is a little bit of a light whitish haze. Part of that is because I applied a little too much, and part of that is because it does have titanium and zinc oxide in it, so it will leave a little bit of a whitish residue on your hand. Okay, so that's sort of how I apply a physical blocking sunscreen. Then they have other things that I think are extremely helpful. Sometimes spray, like I'll spray my daughter's part with the spray sunscreen if she doesn't have a hat. They also make really cool things that are like sticks because my kids really dislike putting sunscreen on their face. And so the same kind of things, you just wind it up and apply it like you would deodorant to your face. So make sure that you like rub it all over. And then I do go in and I rub it all over again just to make sure that I'm fully, you know, exposing the skin to it. This is really also a great thing for like the backs of ears and inside ears because it does go on pretty evenly, and it also, you don't have to spray their face, you don't have to put a lot of gloopy you know, lotion that would be harder to rub in. This is really pretty effective. So I will say that there's a lot of hype about SPF. And I just want to make sure that I say that SPFs are, you know, about the amount of time that you can go in the sun wearing that particular sunscreen before you get burned. But that's just a general rule of thumb. And so really the most important take-home message is wear your sunscreen and make sure that you're reapplying it every few hours. All right. I hope that everyone has a wonderful day. If you have questions, you can reach out to me via the AIM at Melanoma Ask an Expert line. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful day.